Peace, family. Thank you for tapping in to another episode of Sins of the Father. I'm your host, Ani I Am, and just came back with another episode of, talking about how some of these negative past experiences or negative childhood experiences are affecting us moving forward. Be great to kind of get rid of some of those things as we move into this new year, 2025. I want to give a shout out to all those who are looking forward to having a positive, loving, peaceful, happy, harmonious, and prosperous new year. I just want to, share that blessing with you guys and that prayer with you guys that be the case for you, and that some of these things that may be actually holding us back from enjoying those things, we can find a way to resolve, or at the very least start working on, so that 2025 can be a much better year for us all, in terms of emotional health and well-being, as we know that is the catalyst or the prerequisite or foundation of a great and full and healthy whole life. We got to be able to kind of touch into that. So something I was thinking about was how I noticed that there are times when it's not just the parent. And again, let's talk about two adults now at this point, right? We're not talking about a child anymore. So we're going to talk about two parents or two adults, both have negative childhood experiences. Just think about that. So now you got a parent that maybe was considered like a emotionally immature parent. And then now you have that parent has a child who's an adult at this point, and they actually have suffered due to the parent's immaturity, that they have now have to carry the weight of that parent's shortcomings. So now you have this dynamic where both of these people are kind of suffering. And I'm using that for myself, and I'm not kind of talk to it like it's not something like, with my older son, I say, he's an adult at this point, and me having had unresolved negative childhood experiences, and now him having unresolved negative childhood experiences, how are we able to communicate? And of course, there's varying degrees of that for each individual or each unique parent-child relationship, right? I'm only just speaking of mine, and maybe I can kind of touch on some others as well, because I've been speaking with other people who may be going through some of these similar things. So in doing that, I kind of realized that, the child is almost forced to carry the burden of the parent, So when you start to say, and we'll look back as parents and be like, yo, why are you not doing this, or why are you not doing that? Without taking into consideration that maybe they're not doing it because they're not capable in their current mental capacity to fulfill all of those things, if that makes sense, right? Like maybe there's some things that need to be addressed to help them along in getting to a point of being able to take those responsibilities on for themselves, to say, hey, I gotta, I have to do this, I have to do that. And it's just a real thought, and, to not, and what I don't want to do is just like kind of act like it doesn't exist, right? Like it doesn't matter, like it is not something that should be taken seriously, right? So I did a little bit of research and researching some of the more prominent books available on the subject. And in researching it, one of the things they showed was like parental emotional immaturity, where the parent exhibits characteristic of emotional immaturity, such as self-preoccupation, a lack of empathy, difficulty managing the emotions. So that would be me being difficulty managing my emotions, and a tendency to act impulsively or aggressively rather than thoughtfully. in times that I'm interacting with my child or with, any other parent that may be having these kind of issues with their child, right? So when you think about that, how would that affect this child? Me acting aggressively, me acting impulsively, me not having empathy for their feelings, or me not having empathy or having difficulty managing my own emotions. So now I'm almost like dumping my emotions on them, and it's obviously causing them to react in a certain way towards me. So it becomes a cycle of negative behaviors that who benefits? I'm sure I don't benefit. I'm sure that my children don't benefit, right? So how do we, what do we do to kind of work on that? And then before we even start working on it, how do we identify that, how it's affecting the child? What are the things that we see or that, get played out in those roles, in that living? Like, what are those things that get played out? And we start looking at the child, they have a loneliness, they always feel like they're alone. They always feel like nobody understands them. They're going through these things by themselves. And that could be a hard life, a hard understanding, a hard awareness, right? Kind of saying to yourself, man, like I got to go through all this. I got to carry all this weight. And you thinking, and the child is, meaning the adult child is thinking that they're going through this and it's their own fault because they don't understand. But in reality, they're feeling that way because of the lack of empathy that they received from their parents, or the lack of emotional maturity that the lack of emotional maturity that the parent didn't have, which would have given them the tools or the model for them to be more emotionally mature, or more emotionally intact, or more emotionally stable, or just, being able to process things at a much healthier clip. Does that make sense, right? So in understanding and reading back into it now, when as a parent, we'll go into, like, let's just say a defensiveness, because we don't want to accept that we may have been doing these things to someone, right? Think about it. Like, you don't never really want to just say, yeah, I messed up my son, because at the same time, you're messed up from somebody, and then you're passing on them. Now they're messed up, right? But if somebody was to confront you with that, you get defensive because you're not really prepared to deal with it, because you got to deal with it from the generation prior, your own negative past or childhood experiences, and then now what you've passed on to your child. So you're thinking that you may have raised your child great. And literally, I would say with grace, you probably did do the best that you can. I know I did the best that I could with my family, I did the best that I could to try to, help my son out and teach him and give him morals and values and what I thought was wisdom and what I thought was strength. But how I delivered it was the issue, if that makes sense. How I delivered these messages became the issue, became the thing that repelled him, became the thing that frustrated him, became the thing that, like, caused him to have any other obstacles, mental obstacles, in his way of achieving his own greatness or living to his full potential. And I didn't know that. I really honestly could say that I really honestly in my heart thought that I was doing the best that I could. I know it would be times that I would do something, I'll say, all right, you might have went a little too far. You might have yelled too much. You might have did this and that. But I always said, and this is how we kind of put it off on the generation before us. I would say, well, my mother, did something, she went a little bit harder than that. She might have been physically abusive. And I'm saying to myself, okay, well, I'm not doing that, but not knowing that, I'm justifying. That in a sense is what I was just saying, probably a lack of empathy for them. Because I'm saying, you should get over that, man, because you didn't get it. Like, oh, I got it. But that doesn't really mean that what you didn't get doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of insensitive to believe that just because you didn't get it as bad as I got it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt you just as much. You know, because each of us as individuals are processing and dealing with these things in our own way, right? And we should never be ridiculed or made to our feelings to be minimalized because our supposed experiences are not as bad as those of older. So someone's like saying like, yo, well, you know, you wasn't in slavery, so you ain't got it as bad. You know, it doesn't mean that certain things don't affect us just as much, and we don't want to be treated unfairly, right? So it's the same simple, like, you know, we want to say to ourselves that, yo, listen, in all reality, like, we have to be empathetic and aware in our assessment of what we have done, you know. And I've apologized to my children, you know. I've apologized to my children when I can. And I've said to them, you know, that I know that sometimes I was hard, but that was the only way I knew, you know. I didn't have any other model to go after. And I told them that this was not a justification or an excuse. It was just me explaining and apologizing for what I may have done, right? And like I said, I think, you know, when this happens, like, communication, because I'm already going through whatever I'm going through in terms of my not dealing with all of my negative, you know, past experiences, then our communication begins to be difficult, because I tend to sometimes shut down. Like, I'm just quiet. Like, I'll just be quiet. Like, and I'm not quiet because I'm mad. I'm not quiet because I'm angry. I'm quiet because I really don't know what to say. Like, I really could say in my heart, sometimes I just don't know what to say. And I find myself, I'll over talk a thing, trying to explain it so much that it loses its power. It loses its strength because it's being diluted by too many words, too much, and then it overloads the person that I'm saying it to. In this case, like I said, one of, you know, my children or something, it overloads them to the point where they shut down. So now our communication is challenged, to say the least, right? Our communication gets challenged. And I don't know who that serves then at that point. I don't know who that serves, you know? And, you know, I look back and I just think about all of the things that I've watched, you know, in me, right? You know, like people pleasing, you know, like you said, feeling alone. Like, I could be in a crowded room. I could be around a bunch of people. I have all the friends in the world. And there'd be times that I would just sit by myself and just say, why do I feel so alone? And it's just crazy how now that I'm researching this and understanding it, I kind of remember those days when I would be literally sitting somewhere and all of my friends would be outside. Everybody would be around ready to go. And I would be literally in my own head like, why do I feel so alone? Like, I know I could call my friend right now and it'd be 10 of us and we'll go outside in 2 minutes. Why do I feel so alone, so unheard? But this is a direct correlation to feeling unheard by my parent, right? So now I look at my son and I say, does he sometimes feel that way? And, you know, these are new discussions, so I don't want to, you know, give a false pretense to anyone watching that I've had all these discussions already, right? That I fully understand all of these things already. I'd be lying. You know, that's definitely not the case. Like, I'm still learning. I'm still trying to come to a sense of awareness. I'm still trying to practice awareness of how I react, how I'm even speaking to them now, because, you know, they're still my children and I'm still responding to them in certain ways, right? So I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to do it in a way that I know is going to be beneficial to them. And not just to them, but to me as well, you know? Because I'm still healing. So I can't forget that I'm in this process as well. I can't forget that I am still having these difficulties. And, you know, it takes time. It takes time. It takes time and it takes practice. And it takes a conscious effort to be aware of the things that are happening, right? And how the best way forward. Like you have to sometimes stop and pause and say, well, then what is the best way forward? You know, what is the best way forward? It's crazy. It really is, you know. So it's a lot, you know, in dealing with it because, you know, we have to be emotionally ready to kind of deal with these things. Like I don't want to, and please, anybody, don't think that I'm taking any of these things lightly or that, you know, we should have it all together as parents or as the adult children of parents who may have caused trauma. And then this, hopefully this leads to empathy within the children who are not adults yet that we have, so that we can feel like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to do everything possible to avoid this from happening. I'm going to do everything possible to ensure that this does not happen to the next generation. And, you know, as I keep researching and, you know, looking up these things, let me share some of these things with you, if you don't mind. And maybe hopefully, and this is in hopes of being able to identify what's happening. This is in hopes of being able to identify what's happening when, like, we see ourselves talking to our adult children, you know, to our adult children, and being able to know when they may need a little bit more empathy, when they may need a little bit more grace and compassion, because we understand some of the struggles that they may be having. So some of the things I looked up was like, you know, a adult child may adopt roles to gain the parents' approval, putting their parents' needs first while suppressing their own. And I read a really fantastic, what is it? A really, really good, I guess, quote from someone. She's a therapist. I would highly recommend following her on Instagram. She's really been like amazing, based on what I've seen. Yeah, I would definitely. I'm going to try to see if I can find it quickly, guys, because I really think it's worth actually, you know, you seeing or hearing, because it really was something that for me was very clear that it was like, wow, like holy, like this is like amazing. Like this is like amazing. Like this is something that people need to understand. So, and this is, you know, I'm going to assume that this can be interchangeable between both a mother and a father, obviously. It's just as parents, right? So a man, and I'm speaking about this because I'm thinking about me and I'm thinking about my son, right? So as a man grew up in a home where he was micromanaged and controlled. He struggles to make decisions, to be assertive, and to set clear boundaries in his new relationships. So if you see in these things within yourself or within a child, whether it be teenage, whether it be an adult, you know, these are clear identifications that you or someone, your wife or whatever it is, may be doing these things. So, you know, it's things to be aware of that to help us back out of it and you know, back out of it so that we don't continue to do it, or at least be aware when we might be doing it, right? So men who were over-mothered, over-fathered, didn't get to experience independence. Instead, they were controlled and responsible for the parent's emotional state, which is like a codependency. So think about that. Think about the burden of a young man feeling like he is responsible for his parents' emotional state. You know how heavy that is? Like, just really think about that. Like, I'm a child, but I'm responsible for your emotional state. And not only as a child, but as I move into adulthood, I'm still responsible. And it's really, 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 like, crushing me. And so some of the things that was said was that this is especially common in homes where the parent is unhappy in their relationship with their spouse. So the mother's not happy with the father, or the father's not happy with the mother, and or they may lack some type of support. The son becomes the way to fill the void. Like, I just want you to think how heavy that is. The son, this child or daughter, because I don't want to make it, but I guess I'm talking about me in my situation. My son. I'm thinking like those things, like becomes they fulfill the void for me. So if I have a void in needing to feel in control, or needing to feel loved, or feeling to feel this, I'm gonna impose those on you and expect you to give me that because this is what I need. How selfish is that? And then how detrimental can that actually be when you really consider what that means? Like, how detrimental could that be? Like, so some of the things, this is just some of the things that the young lady who put this up is saying, some of the signs of a over-parented, over-mothered, or over-fathered man, they grow with. Some of the things they hear growing up is, you are my world. I would do everything for you. I couldn't live without you. You're going to need to take care of me until I'm old. Be ready to take care of me. And I'm sure we've all said that with the greatest intentions. I'm sure we didn't say that with any thought of harming them, right? But what did it do? As the child, he's had to dismiss his own needs. As a child, he's had to dismiss his own needs and desires to please the mother. So in my case, like with my mom, right? I had to work. I tried to get an approval for things, right? So I had to work extra hard. I had to unrealistic expectations came out of that. Because how could I really please my mom? It's my mom, what am I doing? I can't really do that. I'm always feeling coming up empty, coming up short. Always. And then now if I transpose that on my son, he always felt like he probably was coming up short with my expectations of him. I'm demanding these high levels of excellence, so to speak, or these high, lofty goals without understanding what does he need and what could I be giving him to strengthen him, as opposed to him, because of my lack or because of my lack of certain accomplishments, I'm trying to force that or push that on him. I mean, just something, it can get really, it just really, and then, so here's another thing it says, because the parent was overly involved in making the choices for the child, for doing certain things for the child, or for having certain demands on the child begins to struggle to make decisions. The child might be a procrastinator, might struggle to be assertive, and always is looking for external validation at all times. So when you consider that, and I just said to you, like with me, I know when my mom would, put some of these things on me, these are directly what I would be feeling. When I look back now and I can review mentally my childhood, this is what I felt. This is the inadequacies that at times I felt. And when you really consider how did that affect my choices in career path, in relationships with my, whether it be a female woman or a coworker or whatever the case is, how did that affect that decision-making process, And because I grew up with the responsibility of needing to manage or be there for my mom's emotional needs, how did that, did it lead to depression? Did it lead to promiscuity? Did it lead to, substance abuse? These are just questions, that we got to consider as we're going through this, as we're learning and kind of going through this process and knowing that we have the responsibility not to damage the next generation with sins of the father. Like I'm really, really trying my hardest to make sure that as I go through this journey and I express my vulnerabilities with you guys and talk to you about how I'm trying to grow out of it, that I take into account all of the ways that I could be hurting someone else and mainly my children, but even others outside of my children, because, my childhood experiences may actually cause me to lash out at somebody who has nothing to do, is not my child at all, right? But they're still going to feel the wrath of my inadequacy. They're still going to feel the wrath of my negative behavior. They're still going to feel the negative effects of my behavior if they're not stable or if they have any openness to what I'm saying to them. Things like this, you wonder why children have behavioral issues. And this is a direct relation to why children could have these so-called unexplained, all kinds of various behavioral issues like anger, difficulty concentrating, lack of motivation. Behavioral issues are all up here. I'm not going to say nobody has any chemical imbalances, right? We're just going to say for the most part, on a generally healthy human being, most of their behavioral issues are coming from up here because this is what controls your behavior. How you reacting to the outside world, how you're reacting to the external world, because internally something is off. So if you have tweaked, skewed, screwed up the emotional, mental regulators in a child's mind, then they're going to react in these ways, these negative ways. And then we sit down and we say, "Oh man, you bad kid. I'm gonna whoop your ass." You know what we say. But in reality, they're responding to the dysfunction that's been caused. And we think just because we adults and we good and we got great jobs and we making some money and we have a stable relationship or we have certain things, that we're not still going through these things. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Because if you really took time to really look at your own life, I could almost guarantee you could point out some things that are directly related to the relationship between you and your parents or lack thereof. It's just, the writing is clear. The understanding of it is clear. I'm talking about even down to health issues. We have health issues based on the fact of certain neglect that we may have had, certain stresses that we may have had due to our back. So these stresses become real. They become physical. We're talking about headaches, stomach aches, fatigue, but this comes from stress response, right? From stress. It's so deep the more I study, and I just hope that I could share as much as I can with you guys. And then anything, like I said, I would ask that, if there's anything that I could share in terms of material-wise, anything that I'm studying that you guys would like to know about, please let me know, because I would love to be able to share with you guys and just kind of make sure that you have some of the tools that that I'm becoming aware of, and even just ways to help. So empathetic communication training, right? We got to learn to actively listen, validate a child's feelings, communicate with empathy rather than defensiveness. We got to learn to notice when our children, child, adult child, or younger child experiences what their experiences are instead of judging how they're reacting to these experiences. What do they need from us in that moment? The child should be supported and given a loving, nurturing energy so that they can communicate their needs to you. You know, establishing a safe and trusting environment where the child can express what they want. But if they feel like they're going to be judged all the time, or they feel like something's going to happen, or they're going to be ridiculed for having these feelings, they're never going to speak to us about it. We're never going to get to the root of that. It's just not going to happen. And I know, I'm going to believe that none of us want that for our child. Like, none of us come in saying that I want my child to be dysfunctional. I'm okay with them hurting, you know? You know, sometimes we got to take the time to revisit past hurts with compassion, empathy, and love, and forgiveness. Us forgiving our parents, us forgiving ourselves, and us, you know, hoping that our children are able to forgive us. But that has to come from a place of sincerity, you know, a place of true sincerity, a place of true sincerity, you know, that we really want to help and heal. Otherwise, it doesn't land right, you know. You know, of course, and there's so many ways, you know. It's so many things that we can do to help at this point. Like, we can't. There's no more excuses about why something does and doesn't work, and how it is and how it's not going to work. There's so many ways to do this at this point, and we need to just really start taking responsibility for that. So again, family, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being a part of this episode of Sins of the Father. Again, I'm your host, Ani I Am. I ask that you please share, like, subscribe to this video, and please comment, man. Let me know what you're feeling. Let me know what you're thinking. I really want this to be a collective journey of healing. Right? I know that at this point, I can't really do this alone, right? This is not something that I believe is a singular journey. I think this is a collective journey. That there are so many of us at different points of awareness in this thing that we could all help each other to grow out of this, right? Because I think that we've all been affected, because I don't think any of our parents were perfect. I think they all had their challenges, right? Especially in certain communities having more than others. And I just would really love to kind of, like I said, you know, hear your thoughts. And again, thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me and allowing me to be vulnerable and open. Again, this is Sins of the Father, and I'm your host, Ani I Am. I wish you love, peace in this new year. I wish you happiness, healing, good health, prosperity in 2025 and beyond. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Just click the link below. Peace, family.